Good evening and welcome to Gaming Ballistic's Firing Squad. This is the continuation of a series of interviews with virtual tabletop, online computer gaming aid content creators, developers, and boosters. Tonight we are joined by Liz Theis, developer for Lone Wolf, and we will be talking about Realmworks, a campaign management and planning facilitation tool, which is not a virtual tabletop, but seems really neat for structuring, running, and just remembering what the heck you're doing in any given campaign. So Liz, thank you for joining us this evening.
No problem. I do want to clear the record, though. I'm not actually one of the developers, but I work closely with the developers to communicate what Realmworks has to offer. And I'm a game master myself, so I think I have enough cred to be able to share with you what Realmworks is all about.
Absolutely. So you're one of these evil marketing takes.
Yeah, it's true. But like I said, I am a GM. I've been playing role-playing games since, actually, I think I was 3 when I first played my first game. I was a unicorn. I was awesome.
What is not to be awesome about a unicorn, since only yesterday my daughter informed me that I was evil dark side moon or something from My Little Pony.
Ooh, very nice.
Yes, no. So I've been many roles. Some of them have been unicorns recently.
Excellent. Well, that was my introduction to role-playing games, and I've been able to be behind the virtual GM screen with Realmworks as well. So it's been fantastic.
No, that's great. So tell me a little bit about Realmworks and walk us through what it can do for you.
Yeah. So Realmworks is a game system neutral campaign management tool. Realmworks. We like to talk about Realmworks as having 3 major benefits for GMs. You can immerse your player in the story with Realmworks. You can create a richer world if you're a world builder or content creator with Realmworks. And you can streamline your session prep. So if you're someone who wants to engage your players more at the table, you can use some of Realmworks' great features, like if you have maps or visual aids that you want to share, you can easily share them through Realmworks. My favorite way to get my players involved in the story is to use maps, because it helps them sort of visualize the world around them and sort of forget that they're sitting at a table. So you can use Realmworks to not only show the map, but also show them only the parts that they've seen. So for people that use virtual tabletop tools, it's similar to a virtual tabletop in that the players will only see what they've explored. But it's not a virtual tabletop system. That's what I want to make clear, like you pointed out. Instead, it's really just a complement to a virtual tabletop program, and that if they wanted to, they could see the various places that they explored and have that for context as they're going through the game. If you're someone who's a world builder, Realmworks will not only help you create and store text about your world, but also allow you to add documents, PDFs, Hero Lab portfolios for the people that you might meet or the monsters you might encounter, images, sound files, video files, anything that will help flesh out that world.
So you could theoretically add like the sound of a monster crunching bones or something, and every time a player character gets eaten, you can go.
Exactly. When I was playing with Realmworks for the first time, I had this character, Malcolm the Mad, that just kept popping up in my head, and I was thinking to myself, well, of course Malcolm the Mad would have a maniacal laugh, so here I went going out onto the interwebs to find a maniacal laugh for Malcolm the Mad. So it's a great way to sort of immerse your players into the story that you're telling them. And if you're someone that is trying to cut each and every minute or second that you have to spend on session prep, Realmworks really helps in that regard as well. There's something we call the reveal history. So one thing that can be really difficult for GMs, especially in between game sessions, is remembering what happened. What did the players learn? It's especially difficult when players go off the rails and maybe do something you aren't expecting. So you might have your layout for what you were expecting them to do, and then they do something completely different, and it's hard to remember what exactly they did. So you can go into Realmworks and see what they learned, and it's a nice little list for you to see not only what they learned, but when they learn it. So you can see the date and even the time that they learned a single piece of information. And of course, we have full text searching and user notes so that you aren't scrambling to write a note on the back of a pizza box that you're going to throw out.
Right. No, I've got an entirely pretentious little game book that I try and keep my name in. It's actually kind of funny because I would carry this around when I started blogging because I'd have ideas. Oh, I want to do a blog post about this or that and the other thing. Mm-hmm. And I remember taking it. I actually did a blog post about it. I called it my +5 book of pretentiousness. Anyway, that is entirely irrelevant to the topic at hand. It just seemed interesting. But it is a little bit relevant because, you know what, to your point, you know, if I'm taking notes in this thing, mm-hmm. What I'm not able to do easily is to move that around or rearrange them or cross things out or brainstorm or edit, right? It's hard to edit 40 bond paper with pen because, of course, you can't write in a book like that in pencil. That would be just wrong.
Of course.
Of course. It's much less pretentious if you're writing in pencil because it says you might make a mistake. Anyway, so let me ask a question about. So it sounds as if you can control the reveals, you can talk about stuff. How amenable is the Realmworks program to winging it? Because it sounds like if you're doing things on the fly, you're going to be doing a lot of typing. So how does that mesh? You've used I'm sure you've used Realmworks. You've played with it. How is it for winging it as opposed to I have this great story all done out and I'm just going to pick pieces of it to record?
Yeah, so if you're winging it, I think that you're still going to benefit from what Realmworks has to offer because it's very easy to add people, places, and things. So if your players say you decide that they're meeting this innkeeper, it's very, very simple to just, as your players are talking to them, add an innkeeper really fast. It's just, you know, click, type, save, done. And then, as you're writing notes, if you wanted to, you just have to mention that innkeeper. Let's say his name was Bob. You mention Bob, and it will link your note to Bob that you just created in Realmworks.
Everywhere that you see Bob the innkeeper, you've got a mind map being formed.
Correct. You have this, you can even see the map. You can visualize the map. We call it a link web. So you can see where Bob is linked to throughout all of your other pieces of content. And so it's quite easy if you're just doing a sort of sandbox of on-the-fly approach to do that. If you're a visual person, maybe you don't want to type a bunch of notes in the user notes. You can use our storyboard, which is basically like a plot diagram. And so as your players are doing various things within your on-the-fly game, you just add little plot notes and link them together so that you can go back and reference it after the game.
Cool. Is there a capability, because I'm just thinking of, you know, depending on how quickly you can type or how disruptive it is, it'd be kind of awesome to be able to use, like, you know, the iPhone's speech-to-text feature to do some of those notes. Is that something that you're planning on doing, or?
You know, that's a great idea, and I don't think that's something that we've specifically talked about, but one thing that we are very verbal about to all of our users and will continue to be the case after it's released and out of beta is share your ideas. We might implement it down the road. Actually, there were a couple of features that when we did the Kickstarter we didn't have implemented, and the Kickstarter backers all screamed for these various features. And we said, oh, wow, that's a great idea, and it's now, you know, features that are high up on our priority list that we hadn't thought about otherwise. So
can you give some examples?
Yeah. So to be able to give the example, I sort of have to explain a little bit more about what Realmworks can do. So, and
feel free to share your screen and walk us through stuff that worked very well in a previous instance, and so absolutely, bring it on.
Okay, actually, I think this is the perfect time to do so. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, perfect. Okay, so what you're seeing right now is what we call a topic in Realmworks. So this is actually the wizard I talked about earlier, Malcolm the Mad. See, I loved the concept, so I had to make it. And what you might be able to see, it might be a little small, depending on how the screen is sharing, are these green little balls, green little orbs. So any piece of information with a green orb next to it means that the players know about that particular piece of information. Any gray orb is something that they don't know. So for instance, the players know Malcolm the Mad. They know he's male. They know he's human. They know he's commander of the Shadow Armada. They do not know that he hopes to one day rule all of Onessa, which is a region of my made-up world.
But seriously, if you have a Malcolm the Mad as a wizard, you know he's going to end up ruling something.
Well, I mean, yes, I guess players could figure it out. But in this case, the players don't have confirmation. They might suspect, but they don't have confirmation that that's his grand plan.
Right, but if you were named Malcolm the Mild, or Malcolm the Slightly Wimpy, or
Right.
But,
well, yeah.
All right, just teasing. Yeah.
Okay, so what's really cool about Realmworks is that so let's say they're meeting Malcolm the Mad for the first time. We have this picture, which is a piece of artwork that I got from Adventure a Week. Yay, Adventure a Week! And it's really nice piece of artwork. There we go. Now you can see all of it. We want to show. I was
just gonna say that is truly a mighty beard.
Right? I mean, I think I see Malcolm the Mad when I see that. So my players are meeting Malcolm the Mad, and I want to show them what he looks like so they can actually sort of feel like they're there meeting him. So we're going to show it in our player view. And now, if I was playing my game, I would have the player view set up on an external monitor. You don't have to set it up on an external monitor. You can always just keep it on your computer and then just flip the screen around to them. But when I played with Realmworks recently, I had my laptop, and then, of course, I had it extended to a ginormous flat screen TV as my player view, just because it's more epic that way.
That sounds pretty cool. I mean, that's because that's the kind of thing where it's up, it's in the background, it is right there in your face, and as you say, entirely awesome. So you're looking over your shoulder and you're seeing this crazy frickin' sorcerer, and you just think, okay, bad things are about to happen to me because this creepy dude is looking over my head. Exactly.
So let's say we had this set up to an external monitor. So I would say, as a GM, show in player view. Hooray! Showing in player view. And here's player view for the GM. So I'm going to reveal it to my players. And then, can you still see the player view?
I believe that I can.
Perfect. So that's how the players would view it on that external monitor. So now they see Malcolm the Mad. It's pretty darn cool. Now, if we wanted to, we could even share the information that they've learned about Malcolm the Mad. So we're going to say, show this information in player view as well. I'm setting it up for the players so that they can see it. And now there's Malcolm the Mad and the information that they know about him. Now, you saw there was a ton more text on the Malcolm the Mad topic, but they don't see it. They only see what I've revealed.
So only the things that have the green orb displayed will be displayed when you drag that window over.
Exactly. So that's a little bit about player view. And now I completely forgot what your original question was that made me go on this little loop back then.
Tangents are an important part of the role-playing game experience. The only thing that would make this more perfect is if you segued into a Monty Python joke.
Oh.
or or Doctor Who, or no, that's okay. It's I think that one of the as you were joking earlier as your introduction about I want to show my gaming cred or something like that. And honestly, the only cred that I want someone to have is the credibility to sit at the table and eat pizza.
I have that cred.
No, and that's again, that's not a challenge. It's just when not that, no, I guess it was long ago because it's been more than 4 years since I've actually had a face-to-face group. But I would have anywhere between 6 and 15 or 20 people in my basement, and a lot of them would come join me from the martial arts group or whatever because I had a lot of college students and a couple of sort of older gamers that ancient like me, and I used to have this great gray streak in my it was like all red and then this gray white, and it was really dignified, and then it just got all old and gray, and now it's not dignified anymore. But the thing is, people would come and they're like, oh, what is this gaming thing? And I'm like, come and try it. Mm-hmm. And if people are like, what are this funky dice stuff? I'm like, it's kind of like, a bit of randomness that tells you how cool you are, and the bigger this, because I play GURPS, and the bigger this number, the more opportunity you have to be cool. Oh, okay. And it's like, if you have to kind of whip your nerd out on the table every time that you want to sit down in front of people, that's not going to make the hobby popular enough to support the content creators, whether it's stuff like you, or like, people like myself who either blog or write articles, or, even Paizo or Wizards of the Coast are small relative to the subset of tabletop gamings in which they exist. And then you've got you've got Paizo and Wizards and D&D and Pathfinder, and then way down there, like use a telescope to see it, you've got everybody else. I guess Fate is doing quite well. But beyond maybe those three, I'm missing one, I think. But beyond those three, it's pretty rarefied air, and so if every time you're going to come to the table and say, oh, well, what's your credibility to be talking about this? Well, how about I'm interested in it, Dork Brain? I mean,
yeah, and I think what we're really excited about, because when we talked about building this, right, a lot of people were thinking that it was going to be a tool that was going to be for those most popular systems, because I think a lot of times people that are interested in sort of the less mainstream games are used to their system not being supported, which is why it was so important to Rob, our company owner and founder, that this be a game system neutral tool. It's going to support whatever your approach is, whether it's fantasy for something like D&D and Pathfinder, or maybe something sci-fi if you're into the new Fantasy Flight Star Wars game. So whatever your cup of tea is, it'll work with it well.
It also seems to me that if you are a fiction writer, that this would be an ideal tool to keep track of whatever ideas you have, the relationships. Like, you could easily see, for example, George R.R. Martin needing something like this,
yeah.
or Robert Jordan, rest in peace,
yeah.
Needing something, or Brandon Sanderson trying to pick up the pieces that Robert Jordan left him, needing this kind of tool to say, okay, I'm now writing book, I want to say, did Mr. Sanderson start at book 10 or 11 or 140? Right, but I mean, can you imagine having to come in and pick up those pieces? And credit to him, he did it awesome.
Right.
But I mean, can you imagine having to come in or having to trade the GM spot, for example, or to say, I'm in the middle of book 11 of something, like Dresden Files, for example,
yep.
is a great example, where you've got this history and every book is sort of standalone, but there's a lot of backstory, and oh, did this character ever meet this group before? If you do Ken Height's Night's Black Agents, the Vampiramid, the Conspiramid, you need a tool like this to keep track of that sort of thing. And so it seems to me that Realmworks is a great tool for anybody who's creating an intricate story.
Yeah, and so right now we have about 1,000 people in our beta early access team, and we actually had one of those users post on our forums that he's been able to use it for fiction writing, and he sees a lot of potential with it. We think that writers are going to find Realmworks beneficial for building their stories. One thing actually that when you were talking about George R.R. Martin, I was thinking specifically, oh my gosh, there's so many people that are connected, and it's really relationship driven, all of the different parts of his stories. And that's going to be a great segue for me to talk a little bit about how you can keep track of relationships within Realmworks, if you're okay with that.
I live to provide straight lines to my guests.
Perfect. So to do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the royal family that I built into my story. You can see my screen, correct?
I can, yes, now I can. For a while I just saw you frozen.
Uh-oh. Okay. So this is the queen of Marina, one of the royal families in my made-up world. So we're going to look at how she's related to everyone. And now keep in mind, all of these, this is a much smaller family than you'd see in a George R.R. Martin book. But you can see how the queen, who's up here...
I'm sorry, just to break in. The actual British royal family is smaller than what you'd see in the George R.R. Martin books.
That is quite possibly true. So I think you can see a little bit the different relationship tree. So this is the queen up here at the top, and here's her parents, the queen's sister, the queen's daughter, queen's husband and his parents. So you can see how her family tree is laid out. And something that I added that you can add as an overlay to that tree are how does everyone feel about each other. So you can see that the queen likes her daughter and she likes her husband, and her daughter likes her the queen's husband, but the queen's sister doesn't like her.
Not so much.
Yeah, so you can actually see not only how everyone is related, but you can see how everyone feels about each other. And right now I have it as ancestor and offspring, but you can set it up as just viewing attitudes. You can set it up if it's a city within a region. You can see all of the different cities within a various region of your world. So you can see all of the different possible relationships between your content.
So one of the interesting things is that I played in a game very briefly because sound problems and doom, gloom, and disaster and whatever. But very briefly, I played in a game that was very political with a game master named Christian Bluin. It was he called it the Reclaiming Khazad Doom. It was a Tolkien-based. The dwarves were going back to Moria to kick all the orcs and goblins out. The Balrog was already dead, but they want their cave back.
That sounds awesome.
No, it was a great campaign, and it was really neat. But he had all these factions. You know, the Dwarf King wanted certain things, and you had other factions that wanted other things, and he created this social interaction framework. But a lot of it had to do with the relationship map, and he was doing it by himself. But what you have here is a pre-built tool to do exactly what he was forced to invent.
Right, and what's great is if you as the players all know that information, all he has to do is put that relationship tree up on the player view and just keep it up there the whole entire game, so it's a reference for you, everyone at the table throughout the whole entire game. I don't know if necessarily in that particular game you knew all of the different political factions, but if you did, that was an option.
And you know, the thing is what it allows is for the game master to have and keep track of hidden agendas and keep them hidden.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So what you were the feelings, the attitudes that I showed you were the public attitudes. So there's a separate option for private attitudes. Which I
was going to ask if you can have multiple feelings. Yep. Like if you're like, yeah, you could have like, you know, this is the attitude towards the person, I don't know, in a certain context. You know, maybe it's you know, this is the person is friendly disposed when they're proposing military action, but they're not friendly disposed when they're proposing diplomacy because this is, you know, King Barbarous the warmonger or something.
So right now, Realmworks can't get that specific, though that's a great suggestion. So if anyone agrees with that, just post it on our forums. But what you can do, so for example, my queen is very duplicitous, so she is friendly to everyone out in public, but she really hates about half of them. So the public attitudes towards everyone are friendly, but if you look at her private attitudes, she hates most everyone.
Right. Although it seems like that would be fairly straightforward to implement if you would just, it sounds like you're drawing lots of arrows between things, and if you could just label them, you could just say, oh, this is public attitude, and you just do another connection, this might be private attitude, or then you do another one and you say this is if they propose, something aggressive, this person really likes it, or and then you say, oh, this person is, secretly lusting for this other person, and that's something that George R. R. Martin would need.
Yeah, he'd need
it all really ties back to HBO Central casting in the end. Anyway, that's a conversation that my wife and I have had on both True Blood and George R. R. Martin, is that to be accepted into HBO Central casting, you need a particular set of attributes, whether male or female, that are apparently only found in a small percentage of the population, but they're all on these shows.
Right.
Okay, moving on a little bit. Now, I don't want to move on because it's not interesting. It's just, I think that the relationship mapping is a really neat tool. The structure, you can relationship map cities, you can relationship map people.
Mm-hmm.
Can you weave multiple maps together?
You mean be able to go from one map to another map, or?
I was actually thinking more like, like you've got a city map, like here's or a political map. You've got countries and stuff, but the countries' attitude towards each other, like England and France went to war with each other all the time, but it was the same frickin' royal family because they all had to marry each other, right?
Right.
So you had these very complicated interpersonal relationships, but the relationships between the countries themselves were both influenced by those personal relationships, but very different because of the polities involved. So I'm just wondering if you could have like two coexisting maps that actually crossed over into each other.
So you can create relationships between places. So if you have a place, a regional section of the world that is at war with another region, you can definitely mark that in Realmworks.
Okay. So I want to take a step back to one of the things that you said originally, and I will admit that when I first was like, okay, because I'm interviewing anybody who has something to do with the computer game aid, whether it's a virtual tabletop or not. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna buy into this, but the more that I hear, the more that I am actually interested, especially as I reflect to myself the fact that I'm creating a campaign. I want it to be interesting, I want it to be multi-leveled, and I want to keep track of all this crap. And a email thread with literally 89 emails in it right now with house rules and what about this, and oh, here's a character and whatever, so I've just created a wiki to do that, or I've started to create a wiki, but this has this capability, and it's maybe a little bit more automated for the kind of things that gamers do.
Yeah, so a lot of people, when they look at Realmworks, they say, okay, so how is this any better than a wiki? Because wikis are very popular for gaming groups. Actually, my online game that I play in, our game master has a wiki, and the poor guy, he's put so much time into it, and we don't look at it, which is... Sorry, Tony. But what's nice about Realmworks is it does a lot of the features of a wiki that people are drawn to. So you can do the links between articles. So you can see with Malcolm the Mad that he has a bunch of links in his topic right here. So say the players are meeting Malcolm the Mad, you can just click the link and it'll bring you to the empty topic, because I was just trying out Realmworks, but it brings you to the topic that you linked to. So how do you create those links? If you're building it in a wiki, you have to manually create those links, right?
Right.
Which it can be easy to maybe forget one on accident. So we actually automatically will create those links. So let's say that we're building his professional life, and we want to say that his base is, it would help if I spelled it right, is on Shipwreck Isle. And I just created this snippet, so hopefully it will automatically There it is. So his base is on Shipwreck Isle, and it says, "Oh wait, Liz, you have a topic called Shipwreck Isle. Do you want to create that link?" And you say, "Yes, Realmworks, I definitely do," and it will automatically do that. Now, if you want to, you can manually create those links, but it's just so easy to be able to have Realmworks do the heavy lifting for you, and it's easy if you say your character is Malcolm the Mad like this, but for some reason they call him Mad Hatter or something like that, and so he's going to be referenced. Other places are going to reference the Mad Hatter. You can create things like aliases. So you can say Mad Hatter is his alias, and so if you mention the Mad Hatter anywhere, it will pick up that you're talking about Malcolm the Mad. So it's really easy to make sure that links don't get missed through Realmworks. Another part of wikis that people like is that you can see links that are inbound from other articles, but Realmworks does both inbound and outbound links. So if you look over here to the right where my pointer is, you can see that Malcolm the Mad is referenced by Frederick Demers, and also Celeste Demers and the Shadow Armada, but in his article he references the Dark Winds, Onessa, and a bunch of other topics. So you can use those links to also navigate to other topics. So I was on Malcolm the Mad, and now I'm going to Celeste because she was related to Malcolm the Mad, and here she is. One thing that we wanted to make sure we did differently from wikis is not be dependent upon the internet. We know that a lot of our users go to conventions and run games at conventions, and internet at conventions is expensive, very expensive, and it's not really any cheaper to get your phone to be a hotspot. So after you create your initial realm, you can run the game, you can build content offline. So you don't need the internet to run your game or work on your realm if you're at a convention.
Can every player who... So is this really something that, just sort of from a marketing and sales perspective, every player can or should or doesn't need to have a copy of Realmworks to benefit from it?
So players do not need Realmworks. If you want to just use the player view on an external monitor or on your laptop like I showed you, you can do that. In the future, we are going to have player accounts. So if a player wants to have a player version of Realmworks to be able to see the content that their GM has shared with them, they can do that, and they'll have all of the features, or a lot of the features that you see in the GM version in their player version. So they'll be able to do full text searching, they'll be able to do user notes, fun stuff like that, and they'll see all of the information that their GM has revealed to them with their player version of Realmworks. We're also in the future going to be creating a web-based player access. So this is perfect for players that want to just bring up what they learned during their game on their laptop or their iPad or their Android tablet or any other web supported device in between games, and hopefully it'll be a lot easier. Instead of the GM having to type up all of their information into a wiki that a player may or may not look at, it will be information that is already in there from their prep work, and the players will have access to it because the GM's revealed it during the game. So it's a lot less work for the GM in between sessions, and it's accessible for the players.
Because it would be very interesting to have a setup where you could either do sort of peer-to-peer locally. You don't need the internet. You can use some of the inherent networking capabilities of a bunch of guys with tablets, for example. But also to put everything up in the cloud, Realmworks could effectively create a wiki for you, where you've got players saying tap, 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 and it'd be interesting to sort of say, share with GM, but the GM doesn't really know this, or the GM's characters doesn't really know this, or this is just a private note to me, and have it something where the player could be taking notes about the character, about the game, whatever, and that forms the same relationship map, although they may not be aware. So that the player does stuff, and they're like, oh yes, and I do whatever in Malcolm the Mad, and on the GM screen, it automatically links to the Malcolm the Mad thing. So it's like the player may be creating linkages that they don't know about.
So the player accounts, when they initially come out, are going to be specifically for viewing information. The player accounts aren't necessarily going to allow players to create the content. It's going to be mainly viewing it in the beginning. We have received a lot of feedback, like the stuff you're suggesting, from our users, and it's something that we'd like to look into as possibly implementing some of those ideas, but it's definitely going to be down the line. We want to make sure that we release the player versions of Realmworks and the web-based player access first, and we also are going to be focused heavily on releasing our content market, which I don't think we've even talked about yet. So those are kind of our focus right now, and then we're going to start taking some of those awesome ideas we've received from our Kickstarter backers and some of the people waiting anxiously for Realmworks to just make the product that much better.
So, he says cleverly, what kind of content would be available for your program?
Yes. So
I can feed you a straight line with the best of them, given the right banana pellet to make me salivate.
It was all
wow. That was a mix. Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. So the content market is something that we first talked about on our Kickstarter, which was back in 2013. The content market is going to be perfect for the GM that just wants to run a pre-published, pre-created adventure. So people like my dad, he is like, I don't have time for that. I want to grab an adventure path or a created adventure from a publisher and just run and go. So we are currently working with some publishers to get their content into Realmworks and make it available for sale through our content market. So users will be able to go online, say, I want to purchase that particular adventure, and put it into Realmworks. And once they have it in Realmworks, they can customize it to their heart's desire. Now, we also are going to be getting other assets from publishers, so it's possible we might sell, maps or just particular people or places. It's not necessarily just an adventure. And if you're a GM that loves to create content and share your content with others, you can do that in the content market. So you can build an adventure and choose to sell it through the content market, or just make it available to other Realmworks users. You can do that with adventures, or maybe you're someone who really likes to make taverns, interesting taverns with encounters or people in that tavern. You can make as many as you want and make them available to other Realmworks users.
And I could really see something like that being very compelling, in that you could build a town fairly quickly by saying, oh, I need a tavern, and there might be a map, or you'd say like the tavern would be like, seedy tavern, or high-end tavern, restaurant or brothel, or whatever, right? The high-end tavern that's actually lowbrow, and so you can, right, it's where the elite go to, let their hair down, so to speak. And you can just drag that in, and you can either drag it into a physical map, or you can drag it into a relationship map, and all of a sudden you have all these different ideas. The only thing, and this is sort of where GURPS gets into trouble, but also GURPS is awesome, the town has to be somewhat generic. If there are a lot of pre-existing links if you're assuming that you're in the world of Galarian. Well, if you're not in the world of Galarian, or if you're referencing polities or relationships that only exist in that particular world, then, well, I mean, limiting your world to Galarian. Did I just actually do air quotes? I apologize for that. Limiting your world to Galarian isn't exactly limiting, right? But, if you're doing, what am I calling it? GURPS Alien Menace is my campaign. If I'm doing something that's very specific to that, well, there's going to be like 4 people interested in it, and that's me and my 3 current players.
Right. And, I mean, I have a feeling that there are going to be people that create content for specific worlds or specific game systems. But what's great is if you like the overall concept of whatever you're grabbing, you can just take that down and add it all of the information that isn't applicable to your world or to your game.
Sorry, we're having a little problem here.
No problem.
Like, what is that noise? Yes, that is everything that needs to be cleaned off of my desk, cleaning itself off of my desk spontaneously.
Spontaneously?
Spontaneously, yes. I had a professor at Rice who used to say that when he walked into the lab, glassware would throw itself off the shelves. that was an experience that I was just having. Okay, moving on to something actually relevant, which is nothing that I just said and most of what you just said. So it sounds like the content market is kind of neat for sharing pieces, and it doesn't really put the burden on the one game master to create the entire world. He can borrow fairly freely from the idea base at large.
Correct. So I mean, one example that I like to use a lot is you're spending all this time preparing for your game, and you remember, oh darn, I think my players said that they were going to a tavern. I completely forgot to, create a tavern for them to go to. Content market, get a tavern. Okay, I'm done. And then you're on your way instead of spending another few hours preparing for the game.
Right, and I have definitely had the situation where we refer to it as the players going off the rails, but that's not really fair, right? They're exploring. They're interested in a part of the world that you've created for them. It's just that you can't anticipate their every move. But I've definitely had situations where I'm like, and you've just done something that I think is so cool that it requires actual thought, which I haven't had time to give you. Let's go watch a movie.
Right. Right, exactly.
But you might be able to, using this content market, find something that is interesting or applicable, not interesting, applicable enough. I swore to myself that I would stop using interesting so damn much, but something that's applicable enough that you can just drag it in and have your players start interacting with it in a useful way that keeps the game moving.
Right, and I think what it has a lot of potential for is, you grab down something that someone else created, and it might inspire you to, it might give you that foundation for something really cool that you wouldn't have thought of had you not grabbed it down from another user and sort of use that as your spark. So I think there's a lot of potential for on-the-fly decisions and supporting your player's choice to explore a path that you might not have necessarily prepared for.
So one thing that, and I still think that it'll be interesting. So you've done this, right? I obviously haven't used Realmworks, but you've actually used this in play. So how well does it integrate with the spontaneous, oh, we're doing this, oh, we're doing that? I mean, because it seems like you could easily get into a situation where you're spending an awful lot of time looking down at your keyboard typing as you're trying to catch ideas or whatever. How does this work at the table? Peter Del Orto, who's a friend of mine and a collaborator, his best blog post ever, the most looked at and the most referenced, was just says, does it work in play? Right? Mm-hmm. You may think you have a great rule or a great concept, and it may just not work. Or you may think, actually, this happened to me once, you have a weak rule, but you try it out in play, and you're like, you know what? The emergent behavior from this is awesome, and so it works even though you didn't think it did. That we ran into that in the technical grappling manuscript. But how does it work at the table? How does it work in play? Where is it useful? Where do you think it might get in the way as opposed to facilitate?
So I actually used Realmworks recently with a game system I had not even actually run yet. So I had two few things that I was trying out. I was trying out this new game system, and I was giving Realmworks a go with a group that I hadn't used it for yet. So it was a lot of new. And I honestly, I felt so confident because I had all of the information at my fingertips. I'm one of those people that if I had been shuffling through papers, I would have had an anxiety attack because I would have just been super nervous that I wouldn't be able to find the information in time. So knowing that it was easy to get to was just so incredibly reassuring for me.
No, and I see that because one of the things Steve Jackson Games gets a hard time for not publishing a lot of hardbacks, but one of the nice things about the PDF model that they're using is you can find anything at any time with a couple of keystrokes. Right.
You can just quick do a search, and I felt that way when I was doing Realmworks using Realmworks because even if I couldn't necessarily find a topic really fast, I knew I had the search function right there. For me, I remember specifically one instance in the game where my players were considering just totally not doing what they were quote unquote supposed to be doing. I did the air quotes too, and now we're even. And I didn't feel panic because I saw the rest of the story laid out in front of me. I'm a visual person, so I was using the storyboard feature to sort of keep track of where I was in the story. And I felt confident that I knew enough of the world and enough of the area that they were in, that if they decided not to do what the next step in the plot was that I was running for them, that's fine, because I knew I was going to be able to roll with it, and it had enough context for the situation to be able to either steer them back to the story that I wanted them to be on, if I really wanted to do that, or support some new story. And still be able to use some of the content that I had put in there. So I didn't necessarily have the experience of them completely going off the story and having to fly with it, but I feel like I would have been able to manage well if they had.
Right. It does seem that the strength of it is if you have a detailed world, you can keep track of it, but if you're really making it up as you go, it seems like that would not be the sweet spot, right? There's always going to be something that a computer aid or whatever, we just talked about that with John Lammers, there are certain things that if you're coding rules into the system, if you all of a sudden have to break the rules, you just can't do.
Right.
And in this particular case, it seems like one of the places where if you're truly just playing an improvisational game and you've got a basic layout for the world, but basically you're making crap up, that would be... You can do it, but you better type fast.
You can do it, and you would need to do clicking and typing. It depends on. I mean, if you're doing that sort of game, I don't know if you'd necessarily want to have all of that information there for reference. If you do, I would recommend giving it a try to type or point and click. But I don't know if you'd necessarily want to have all of that reference for your past games, and that's where I think you'd benefit from using Realmworks, is being able to see what happened.
Sure.
But I think that yes, there would be typing involved. There would be some clicking here and there. I don't think it would be impossible. But one thing that, like you said, that users really benefit from is being able to see how the story fits in within a world and within a story. So if you're making it up as you go along, you aren't necessarily seeing all that happen, but I still think that there would be some benefit.
No, yeah, it seems like there would be. I always wonder, I'm just thinking out loud, is there a feature within Realmworks, or can you conceive one where it's like you can actually just sort of click a button and dump your entire campaign in HTML format to a wiki, so you can just sort of upload it and say, click one button and instant wiki?
So, from what I understand, that would probably be very complicated to implement. I am not saying that it might not ever happen. We've had a couple of users request that you be able to print out the information
oh, yeah,
from
I
your
can see
world.
where a multi-level interactional with links would get challenging to print out in a linear fashion.
Right, and I think that the the future of Realmworks, the future that we envision, rather, is the web. So we want to take what I showed you and move that over onto the web. So you're going to get a lot of the benefits that you're talking about if we were able to port it over to a wiki. Now, it would be within our system, but if you have access to the internet and you're running a game for people, there are definitely benefits for being able to run it from the web, because you can run it on your laptop, you can run it from your tablet, you can run it from a lot of different platforms.
What kind of interactions do you foresee between your program and other programs that might exist, other virtual tabletops, other map programs, other wikis, whatever?
Yeah, so Realmworks, like I said earlier in the beginning of our conversation, Realmworks complements virtual tabletops. We are not trying to get into the virtual tabletop industries. We are friends with and support a lot of virtual tabletop companies. So we'd rather say, all right, you do what you do best, and we'll do what we do best, and let's work together. So we'd like to talk to some of those companies about creating some tighter integration. How that's going to actually turn out is sort of it's not decided right now, because we still have to talk with those companies and see what we can do to create that integration between our two systems. For maps, we love to use maps within Realmworks, but we are not a map creation tool. So if you have a map creator, or you like to purchase really high quality maps, you can add them really easily and use them within Realmworks. I'm actually going to take this opportunity to show you one of my maps within my realm, because I think it's pretty cool. So here's Realmworks. All right, so I'm going to go, actually I think I already had it up. I'm going to go to Shipwreck Isle. So Shipwreck Isle is another map that I got from Adventure Week, and you can see that there's a bunch of pins on it. And these pins didn't come on the map. These are pins I placed to mark certain locations within the island. So you can see that this is where an event takes place called the Spirit Guide. And so I can actually use this for navigation if I wanted to during the game. So if you're like a visual person like me, where's my, here we go. So the players end up going to the Kobold Ruins. Oh, hey, there's the Kobold Ruins, and now I can run, have all the information for the players when they come to that location. So it's really quite nice for viewing stuff. Now let's go back to Shipwreck Isle just as a map. I want to point out again, so you'll notice that this section is light and this section is all darkened. This is because only the light part is the section that the players have actually explored. So we're going to show it in the player view. So if the players see this in the player view, it will only be this light part, and it will center it so that they don't see all of this darkened area. Because one thing that, when I play my virtual game, I'll admit, when I see a dark area, it's oh, GM, can we explore that dark area to the right? and he sort of gives me the evil eye of, yes, Liz, let's explore that dark area to the left.
Thank you for using your metagame knowledge.
Exactly. So,
by the way, that area is currently spawning Liz Eaters.
Exactly. So it really, like I think I might have mentioned this, but the Realmworks development team is made up of game masters. So they were thinking of all of those annoying player quirks and problems that they encountered when creating this. So it was very important to them that
surely our players are never annoying. or ornery, or contrary, or rules lawyers,
Oh,
or
never.
anything like that. No.
I'm sure I've never exasperated my GMs at all. Never. So it helps in terms of metagaming, and specifically for stuff like maps, to make sure that players don't go off and explore the big dark area.
And it's really interesting because, damn it, I just said interesting again. I hate that.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's okay. It's very player-centric in a way, because if effectively it's a lot like, you're looking at a navigation app and the world is always centered on you, and that's not necessarily narcissistic. It is from a certain point of view, but what it says is that the map is centered on the map is centered on the character's perceptions, and the players are viewing the world through those characters' perceptions, and therefore you are centered. It is a game. It is a character-centered map.
Exactly. One thing that I really love about Realmworks, and was really excited about when I first got introduced to it, is it's not just for the GMs. It's a tool that I think players will see a lot of benefit out of, and I mean, it sounds so corny to say, oh, this tool is going to help engage your players at the table, but I think that is an accurate assessment of what Realmworks has to offer when it comes to how it can be used to get your players more involved in who they are as a character and in the world that you've built or you're running.
Yeah, no, it really seems like that would be an interesting thing to do, because not only can you structure a game in the background, you can do a little bit of real timing it. If you have a cool detail, if you're interacting with a character, you can bring it to the forefront. Oh, by the way, the guy has foot fungus or whatever, right? If that becomes a game relevant detail, right?
There you go.
Or Malcolm the Mad's brains are particularly non-tasty to zombies, if that became an issue. But I mean, you can have details like that where it's like certain things that notionally would have shaped an encounter. You can't remember everything. Okay, maybe you can remember everything. I'm old and with kids and stuff, and so and anytime you got the toddler running around, or preschooler in my case, you're a little frazzled at any given time. So it's something where you're like, oh yeah, you know what? This character, there's a detail that I need to be on. I want the players to know, but there are a couple of cues that are going to be right up in front of me every time I click on it. So I mean, it really does seem like a useful thing that prevents the plot equivalent of flipping through a rule book.
Exactly.
So I mean, I think you've laid it out for myself and hopefully anyone who might be watching. We actually had 3 whole viewers that logged on during the conversation. But I always give my guests the last word. So as we do sort of the parting shot, as I call it, it's a ballistic theme. What do you want people to walk away with as we wind down?
Well, actually, what I just said about it being, a tool not just for GMs but also for players, I think that's something that is really important for anyone who's interested in Realmworks to understand. It's not just for someone who is, really big into world building. If you are, that's great. But if you want to put in an adventure path, or once the content market is available, grab one from there. Check Realmworks out. We have a lot of information up on our website, and also a virtual tour video, which Douglas, I think you went through, which gives you a nice overview of what you can expect to get out of Realmworks. So take a look. It's on our website, www.getrealmworks.com. Realmworks will be available this month. So depending on when this becomes available, it's either already out or will be out soon. So to keep up with the latest news, I encourage you to like us on Facebook, follow us on Google Plus or Twitter, And if you want to, we have a monthly newsletter that goes out, so you can get sort of the digest of all of the news from the previous month. So you can sign up for that on our website. So really, if you're GM, this is the tool for you. So go check it out.
Cool. One last question, because you brought it up sort of, and it occurs to me. How much? I mean, is this a $10, $20, $30? What's the price of entry? Firstborn, seven goats. You know, what's the?
It's $49.99. So that will get you the Realmworks tool for as many computers as you want. People that are used to our other products, Hero Lab and Army Builder, we had a different licensing model where you had a certain number of computers that you could use it on. Realmworks you can use on as many machines as you want. And the $49.99 not only includes Realmworks, but it also includes 6 months of cloud service. And the cloud service is what's going to be, it's what's going to allow you to not only store your content out onto our server, but also it's what's going to allow you to share and access data from the content market when it is available in the future. It's what's going to allow you to make your information available to players via the player accounts that we talked about. And it will allow you to easily transfer your information between computers. So you can do a backup your files and restore to a computer without the cloud, but it's definitely just a click and go if you're using our cloud. So those 6 months are included. They're if I remember correctly, a $24.99 value. So it brings the cost of the Realmworks software itself down to I think not a firstborn child value. So I think it's quite reasonable for all of what you're getting out of a tool.
Well, firstborn children are notoriously expensive. So.
There we go.
Especially if they're hard to come by, like mine was. And I certainly, as an employee of one of the major disk drive manufacturing and development companies, I highly encourage everybody to buy lots of cloud stuff. But because that's how I can afford the firstborn child, is people going out and buying lots of disk storage. But that's neither here nor there. I want to thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
You've articulated the value of the program, I think, pretty well. Or even if I don't think you've done it, which I think you have, the merits to both content creation, content sharing, and content communication, I think are pretty interesting. I wouldn't necessarily have leapt into that pool, but you've made a compelling case.
Well, thank you. That's my goal.
All right. Thank you for joining us this evening.
No problem.